Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Husker Nation, brought to you by XCancer. Check them out at xcancer.com. Today I have a special guest, Nebraska Athletic Director, Mr. Trev Alberts. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Adam. How are you?
I'm glorious, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Lots of questions. I actually had to go through my questions and be like, all right, I got to narrow it down a little bit. But I want to go back just quickly before we go forward. Okay, and I want to spend most of the time looking ahead. But just going back in time a little bit, all right, when the decision was made to let go of Scott Frost and you're headed into that meeting with Coach Frost, what was that like for you?
Well, those are, and I think I said it at that press conference at that time. I mean, those are just really hard days. You certainly never sign up for leadership positions and look forward to times when you have to separate from folks, especially separate from folks like, Scott, an alum and a decorated player, a lifelong Nebraskan. And so, fortunately or unfortunately, based on how things are going, you almost get to a point, Adam, where it's not really a surprise for anybody, that it's likely coming. So, certainly wasn't fun. And I just respected, the way that Scott conducted himself. I said that as well. And, he understood and was, very collegial. And we just had an honest conversation and then tried to move forward from there. So, yeah, it was a pretty tough day and not one that I looked forward to, I can promise you.
Now, you mentioned in the press conference where you're now announced Matt Rhule as our head coach. This is probably the longest coaching search in the history of Husker athletics. Quite the process. You mentioned you spoke with 13 different coaches. Some of the things and qualities you were looking for in our next head coach of Nebraska football was you wanted a grinder, someone who's going to bring an identity to Nebraska football, someone who is going to develop players, and a leader. So going into the month of November, all right, how many candidates were still on the table at that point in time?
Well, really everyone. I mean, in the sense that, one of the hard parts here was we had an interim coach that was doing very well. And I had an honest conversation with Mickey very early on. I mean, Adam, I couldn't just sit here and wait and not activate in a national search until there was clear definition, on our interim coach. And, Coach Joseph understood that as well. The early part of it, there was, and I knew this, when you've got 9 games in a season, first of all, that's basically the entire football season that you're doing the search. There were 2 things that were really, really critically important to me. Number one, I did not want to have a search that had so many leaks and rumors that the search itself was constantly in the face of our football team and our coaching staff. I didn't think that was fair to Coach Joseph, and I didn't think that was fair, to our football players. Yeah. Secondly, I think there's a professionalism that's expected from top candidates and their agents, and if we couldn't execute a coaching search at a high level, I was concerned that it might exclude some coaching candidates for us. And so by sort of going underground and doing it the way we did, as we got into those later months, I was still having conversations with all of those candidates. What you don't know, Adam, is you might have identified your, quote, A list of candidates, and let's say there's 3 or 4 guys on there that you think, hey, they could all be outstanding coaches at the University of Nebraska. But what happens if, one or more or all of them ultimately decide either to not coach, in the case of Matt Rhule, or take other jobs? You have to continue managing your entire list, even those that you might have a notch lower. I can tell you that every one of the coaches that I interacted with, I think, and I could see them in the role of head coach here being successful. I really could. Now, I think some of them had different qualities and characteristics and experiences like Matt Rhule had that sort of separated them from the pack, but they were all outstanding coaches.
Now, 3 years from now, okay, I didn't want to look back too much. I just wanted to ask those questions. Now I want to look ahead. So 3 years from now, what do you hope Nebraska football looks like? And I think we're to a point, I know I am, and people I talk to, like, we don't want to hear, oh, we're getting better and we're improving 3 years from now. I think if we go into a game and we have 1,000 total yards of offense and we hold the other offense to negative 1,000 total yards and we lose the game, at the end of the day, people are to the point where they want to win football games. So I'm just going to ask it, what would a successful win-loss record look like 3 years from now for Nebraska football in your mind?
Well, obviously, I agree with you have to win. I'm also very careful, Adam, about, I'll never say we should have won 9 games or 10 games. Because as you know, you could have a football team that is really, really talented. And in week 3, quarterback and running back goes down and your star outside linebacker's out, could really affect your team. So I won't go down the path of suggesting, but I think there should be a fairly immediate example and difference relative to toughness, physicality, all of the things that you and I were taught that lead to wins. Those are things that can happen very quickly. And so, but that culture of toughness and that culture of effort, that culture of execution, that culture of fundamentals, that culture of discipline, those don't take time. Those can be instilled and installed immediately. And the development piece is what takes a little bit of time. And that's where you saw at a Temple and at a Baylor that, the development of, you need to see those young men that you bring in that first year, in that third year, need to be really developed and playing significant roles. And first of all, they need to still be on the team, right? Mm-hmm. Which is indicative of your culture. And it's a harder thing to do today than ever before with NIL and the transfer portal. But I do think if you've got the right culture and the right leadership, most of those players will still be a part of your program and they will have developed. And ultimately, that's what's going to lead to the types of wins that we're talking about that we all aspire to. Because, we talk about this all the time between the walls of the athletic department. We are in the competition business, Adam. We get defined by wins and losses. Instead of shrieking from that, we're going to embrace it and recognize that we're in the competition business. So we're well aware that Matt Rhule's been hired to win football games.
So that actually leads perfectly into my next question. And most folks are probably aware, but if you're not, at Temple, year 1, Matt Rhule won 2 games, then 6, then 10-10. The rest of his tenure there at Baylor was 1 win. Year 2 was 7, year 3 was 11. So here's my question with the transfer portal. Obviously, pluses, minuses with that. Do you think the transfer portal is a good thing? And do you think it's a realistic expectation that it could speed up the turnaround process of Husker football?
Yeah, I do. I think that the transfer portal for certain, institutions helps to, even and level the playing field. So I think given where Nebraska athletics is right now relative to our football program, I think the transfer portal can be really of significant help. The key, though, as you know, is going to be Coach Rhule and our coaching staff's ability to identify the right type of talent in the portal that fits within the culture they're trying to establish and within the schemes that ultimately they will deploy on the offense and defensive side. So that's another reason why I have some confidence, given Coach Rhule's experience and having done this before. I think their ability to identify talent that fits with what they believe in, both high school talent and transfer portal talent, will be a big advantage. So I do think that it's a benefit that wasn't there while he was the coach at Temple and Baylor. And obviously, like you, I'm hopeful that that expedites the process in terms of wins and losses.
I think that's a great point because we haven't had a clear identity on offense or defense in a while, going back and forth from 4-3 to 3-4 and such on D. And then the offense changed quite a bit last year, bringing in Mark Whipple. Like, if you don't know what the finished product is supposed to be, it's hard to know who to bring in. It's hard to know how to exactly develop them. And Coach Rhule seems to know exactly what he wants to do, so it's going to make it much easier and faster to get that finished product, the players, developed where he wants them to be. So that makes a ton of sense to me. All right, so Nebraska's playing in Boulder next year. It's going to be Deion's first home game, going to be Matt Rhule, going to be Deion Sanders. Sure, this is going to be a lot of fun, a lot of eyes on that particular game. All right, I'm sure you've heard this, but Colorado's AD came out and said, don't sell your tickets to Nebraska fans. So immediately Nebraska fans want to buy every ticket they can. Challenge accepted. I'm just curious. It's more of a fun question. When you heard him say that, like, what was your instant reaction? With me, I smiled, and I'm like, well, now they're definitely coming. But what was your thought process when you heard that?
Well, I didn't see it immediately, but I, listen, you could take it one of two ways. Either it was a brilliant business move because they got to find a way to pay the new coach and coaching staff that they just committed to. So could there be enough strategic thinking to say, hey, listen, all you have to do is challenge Nebraska fans, and I promise you they'll show up. Or was it legitimate? Either way, listen, got a lot of respect for Colorado, got a lot of respect for Dion, and he'll do a great job there. He'll elevate the institutional profile, and they'll be a tough team. But we won't worry much about Colorado, Adam, because we're going to go on the road and play at Minnesota week 1 in a prime time in a game that counts in the West Division. So we'll take it one game at a time. I'm sure that's what Coach Rhule will say. But, I wouldn't put anything Nebraska fans, football fans in particular, but I think across the board, you challenge Nebraska football fans, they will show up en masse, and it'll be a great environment.
Absolutely. For me personally, I don't have to look at it as a player or coach anymore, because I would have immediately said, oh, we're focused on Minnesota. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. So I can skip over Minnesota for now and go to Colorado and then revisit Minnesota when it gets closer. I've missed playing Oklahoma. I've missed playing Colorado. Like, if you're like, hey, who are the two teams you miss playing the most? It's those two teams. And I love that we have played them. 2 years from now, it'll have been 6 straight non-conference years we will have played those two teams. So I love that. All right. So we got a new defensive coordinator, Tony White, highly thought of, had multiple offers, chooses Nebraska. My question is this, the 3-3-5 defense. What are your thoughts on that defense as a whole? And what do you know about it? Do you know much about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't, Adam, portend to be a 3-3-5 expert. I will say I am a fan and admirer of Rocky Long, and did a lot of games when he was both head coach and defensive coordinator. And I just remember in preparation for trying to call the game, the challenge of the 3-3-5 is that it's versatile, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. And so trying to identify who each defender is and what their role is, because they're so interchangeable, can be a challenge for an offense. I also wouldn't get too wound up or, based on what somebody's done previously. I think there's adaptability to everything. And so you may have some core principles of 3-3-5, but, I think what smart coaches do is recognize we're in the Big Ten. You look at Big Ten offenses, you look at how you're, the basic structure of what you like to do and how do you adapt that to fit within. But at the end of the day, what I do know is that 3-3-5 defense, or any defense that can cause and create havoc, create turnovers, create confusion for the offense, and ultimately put a lot of speed and chaos on the field, is the kind of defense that I like. And you and I played in those types of defenses, and that's what the black shirt tradition is frankly been based on. It's a defense of people flying to the football, hard hitting, getting turnovers, just creating chaos. And so looking forward to seeing Coach White instill that type of philosophy for our defense.
I know you're not going to go too much in depth into this, but I'm just going to ask on the top, the superficial part of this, is there a chance or a possibility at all maybe he runs a different defense, a 4-3 or 3-4 as his base defense going forward?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I've not talked to Coach White, and certainly haven't talked to him about schematically what his plan is. But I think you could see just about anything. And I'll tell you, most defenses today, because of how sophisticated offenses are and all of the different looks that you're going to get, this idea that you sit in one base front and run a couple coverages, that's just not the reality of modern football anymore.
Yep.
You're going to have to be multiple. You're going to have to be versatile. You're going to have to show different looks. I'll give credit to, our coaches this year. I mean, there was a lot of change week to week on what we were doing defensively. You have to do different things. These quarterbacks, the offensive coordinators are too good today to just do one thing consistently week in or week out. They will find your weakness. So I wouldn't be surprised at all that, there certainly will be 3-3-5 elements in what we do, but it'll be versatile, it'll be adaptable, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't change on a week-to-week basis based on who you play. I mean, there's different types of offenses, there's different types of personnel week to week that, at the end of the day, great offensive coordinators are finding matchups they can win. And they're getting their best athletes in space in areas that you have a challenge, either from a personnel perspective or the structure of your defense. And, I think it's much more sophisticated today, and we probably all understand. And I think the ability of the coach to adapt to it and have personnel that's multiple and versatile enough that they can adapt to different looks and different schemes will be really important. And I think Coach White has had a track record of being able to do that at a high level.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, Husker Nation, go Big Red. And always remember,
throw the bones, baby.
This show is brought to you by XCancer. Join the fight at XCancerStore.com and support your loved ones, your neighbors, and cancer fighters all over the world and help them gain access to revolutionary treatments. XCancerStore.com has a wide variety of t-shirts and merchandise supporting a wide variety of cancer battles so you can show off the colors that matter. Proceeds from each purchase not only help those at home, but also cancer fighters in Tanzania, Africa. Check them out at XCancerStore.com.